Hello and welcome to Old Stories for Tired Eyes. This is the Assignation. Fame singing in the highways, and trifling as she sang, with sordid adventurers passed the poet by. And still the poet made for her little chaplets of song, to deck her forehead in the courts of time. And still she wore instead the worthless garlands that boisterous citizens flung to her in the ways, made out of perishable things. And after a while, whenever these garlands died, the poet came to her with his chaplets of song, and still she laughed at him, and wore the worthless wreaths, though they always died at evening. And one day in his bitterness the poet rebuked her, and said to her, "Lovely Fame, even in the highways and the byways you have not forborne to laugh and shout and jest with worthless men. And I have toiled for you and dreamed of you, and you mock me and pass me by." And Fame turned her back on him and walked away. But in departing she looked over her shoulder and smiled at him as she had not smiled before, and, almost speaking in a whisper, said, "I will meet you in the graveyard, at the back of the workhouse, in 100 years. This is Charon. Charon leaned forward and rode. All things were one with his weariness. It was not with him a matter of years or of centuries, but of wide floods of time, and an old heaviness and a pain in the arms that had become for him part of the scheme that the gods had made, and was of a piece with eternity. If the gods had even sent him a contrary wind, it would have divided all time in his memory into two equal slabs. So gray were all things always where he was, that if any radiance lingered a moment among the dead, on the face of such a queen perhaps as Cleopatra, his eyes could not have perceived it. It was strange that the dead nowadays were coming in such numbers. They were coming in the thousands, where they used to come in 50s. It was neither Charon's duty nor his wont to ponder in his gray soul why these things might be. Charon leaned forward and rode. Then no one came for a while. It was not usual for the gods to send no one down from earth for such a space, but the gods knew best. Then one man came alone, and the little shade sat shivering on a lonely bench, and the great boat pushed off. Only one passenger. The gods knew best. And great and weary Charon rode on beside the little, silent, shivering ghost. And the sound of the river was like a mighty sigh that grief in the beginning had sighed among her sisters, and that could not die like the echoes of human sorrow failing on earthly hills, but was as old as time and the pain in Charon's arms. Then the boat from the slow gray river loomed up to the coast of Dis, and the little silent shade, still shivering, stepped ashore, and Charon turned the boat to go wearily back to the world. Then the little shadow spoke that had been a man. "I am the last," he said. No one had ever made Charon smile before. No one before had ever made him weep.